Now I would like to introduce Carol Cando-Pineda. Carol is counsel with the Federal Trade Commission's Division of Consumer and Business Education, where she leads teams to create and distribute free consumer tips online, in print, on video, and on social media to help people spot scams and manage their money. She heads up the agency's outreach through public libraries, as well as the Military Consumer Partnership. Carol began her FTC career as a staff attorney, then served for several years as a liaison between the FTC and the U.S. Congress. Subsequently, she served on temporary assignment as an attorney for the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Energy and Commerce. She earned her AB from Harvard College and her JD from Suffolk University School of Law. And now I'd like to hand the program over to Carol.
Thanks so much, Mary. And thank you, everybody, for sparing a few minutes with us today. And I hope that I'll be able to give you some really helpful information so that you can help your patrons avoid coronavirus scams and scams in general. You'll get some tips that really are applicable across the board. So first, let me point out on my main slide here, the URL ftc.gov/coronavirus. A lot of the information I'm going to be talking about today comes from that page, and there's also lots of helpful other information on there. We can talk a little bit about that later. So let's jump in. One of the first points that I really wanted to make was that fraud can happen to anyone. Very often we have sort of this mistaken notion that it's only people that are particularly not following the headlines, or that they're not especially sophisticated, that perhaps that's why they're losing money to scams. And that's really not the truth at all. We know that scammers follow the headlines, and they evolve scams over time as situations change. So this kind of a situation that we're having with the pandemic is the ideal environment for scammers. There's fear, there's confusion. There are these little gaps in knowledge where they can take advantage, and that's all they need. They need just enough time to get us kind of off balance just a little bit, to be a little bit confused. They operate with a lot of emotion to try to get you afraid, concerned, maybe even this offer sounds too good to be true and you just can't say no to it. They try to find where you're vulnerable and take advantage of that. They do that to all of us. And all they need is for you to just be off balance for just that second, and they're able to take advantage. They just need that minute to get your personal information, to get you to share an account, to agree to pay them for something, because you're so deep in it that it's very hard for you to see your way out unless you take their offer of help, right? And what we try to tell people is to recognize some of these warning signs that I'm going to share with you, and use it to get people to stop for a second, to take a breath. And most of the time that breaks the spell. Most of the time people will be able to recognize for themselves something isn't right about this. Even if they can't put their finger on it, they know enough to go and talk to somebody they trust and say, hey, how does this, let me run something by you. How does this sound? And that's enough for them not to be taken in by the scam, or not to lose money, not to lose their personal information. So let's start to talk about some of these scams and some of the warning signs that we see. One other point before I go on to that. I just wanted to raise this other point about victims of fraud, and we hate to use that word victims, but just people that perhaps lost money to a scam. Younger people reported losing money to fraud more often than older people. And by younger people, I mean people between the ages of 20 and 29. So they lost money at the rate of 43% of the people that reported to us, as opposed to just 15% of the people ages 70 to 79. So that flips an assumption on its head. Most of the time, we assume it's older people, particularly as they get much more into advanced older age, that they're going to be more frail and more likely to lose money. That's not the case. But what is the case is when people that are 70 and older lose money, the median loss of money that they lost is much higher. So younger people are losing money more frequently, but older people are losing larger amounts of money. That's a snapshot of data from the last couple of years. Who knows if it'll stay the same or if it'll change and morph over time. But I mention that just because sometimes our assumptions or how frauds have existed over years, it's just not the same anymore. Things change over time. All right, so here we go. So initially, at the beginning of the pandemic, we saw a lot of, excuse me, scams related to treatments and cures. That would be offers of vaccines, test kit offers, some sort of miracle cure that's going to help you not catch coronavirus or not become ill from COVID-19. And then also Medicare related scams. That if you're a Medicare recipient, you can jump to the front of the line for a vaccine, for a test kit, for some kind of a miracle cure, for some kind of advanced treatment. So those were pretty easy in terms of messaging early on in the pandemic because none of those things existed. What was the challenge was people were so concerned, so afraid. Everybody was worried. You know, we're in lockdown for a period of time, and people are thinking life is never going to get back to normal unless we get a vaccine and somebody has this vaccine and I want to try it out, or I want to try this test kit so that I can make sure I don't pass this along to my family. And everybody was in the same boat. And so it was very easy for scammers to just fill that gap and try to get people to buy these products. And so either they were sending you something that was fake that didn't work, or they sent you nothing at all. And they just got your personal information and some money from you. So that's what we saw really at the front end, at the leading edge, you know, in March, April, continued through the years, but throughout the year, but became a little less insistent because people started to catch on that they shouldn't try to get some kind of a miracle cure based on a sales pitch. What's interesting now is, so we've had this period of time living in this situation, 7 or 8 months, and people are a little bit more accustomed to that idea that, you know, there isn't a vaccine yet, there aren't test kits yet. Well, so now we arrive at a point where there are viable vaccines being developed and being tested and getting ready to come to market. And there are test kits. There's a home test kit that was just tentatively approved. It was sometime this week, in the last few days. And so we expect to see an uptick in those kinds of cases again, because again, there'll be confusion over exactly which is the approved test kit, where you can get it, where you're going to be able to get vaccine. And so I really encourage everybody to go to your existing trusted sources of information. You know, if you're interested in the vaccine, you want to call your doctor, right? You want to find out, you know, what the status of the availability of a vaccine is and how you could get it and where you might be in the queue to be able to get it, right? We know those of us average citizens are probably not going to be able to get it for another 4, 5, maybe 6 months. And so that's kind of a ripe time for scammers to try to take advantage of that, of, you know, everybody's desire to get that vaccine. Same thing with the test kits. You want to go to ftc.gov/coronavirus and find out the URLs for the CDC and for the other medical related organizations that can give you factual information about what is the test kit that has been approved, and, you know, when it'll be available and how you can get it. You certainly don't want to start ordering things online, especially through sites that perhaps you've never done business with before and you don't have a track record with them. And you also don't want to fall for a sales pitch. If there's a miracle cure, if there's a vaccine, if there's a test kit, we're going to hear about it through the national news media. We're going to hear about it through medical websites. We're going to hear about it through our doctors. We're not going to hear about it through a sales pitch, most likely. So other scams, aside from the treatments and cures, related to getting cleaning supplies, Uh, Very often, somebody would send you the solicitation. They'd get your credit card number, or you'd pay them through PayPal or something like that, and they wouldn't send you anything, or they would send you shoddy supplies that clearly didn't have that disinfectant power to them, or something that just wasn't it wasn't going to work. Um, Again, those trail off after a while once the economy started to bounce back and we started to have more availability for cleaning supplies. If they become in short supply again, that may actually start to increase. Just depends. You want to order your cleaning supplies from places that you trust and try to vet that. Imposter scams are any kind of a scam where the scammer pretends to be somebody legitimate, somebody that you know and trust, so that um, they can get your money or your personal information. It's just a way to trick you into feeling comfortable to doing business. And they come in all different varieties, all different flavors. For some reason, there was an uptick in phony Social Security Administration calls. That is, the scammer will call and say, your Social Security number is about to be taken off the master list. It's about to be deactivated. It's been compromised. There's a variety of different come-ons that they use. For a while, it was the biggest imposter scam that we were getting reports about. And then COVID hit and other things started to take over. And then the Social Security Administration scams started to decline again. They might have some sort of a COVID-related twist. And so be wary of those. Nobody from the government is going to call you and threaten you or demand that you pay them immediately to make a problem go away, or to ask for certain forms of untraceable payment, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now, as we're getting a little bit more into this pandemic, we're seeing more debt relief scams, where scammers will try to promise you that they can help you get relief from problems you're having with your mortgage, with your student loans, with auto payments, those kinds of things. And then one form of identity theft that has increased relates to unemployment benefits, with the scammer using your Social Security number to claim unemployment benefits through your state. And so then if you go to file for unemployment benefits, there's none available for you until you get that straightened out. And so if that happens to you, you want to let your company know immediately. And then you want to let your state unemployment benefits office know immediately, so that you can get it straightened out, so that if you do need to file for those benefits, you're able to do so and you can get that straightened out. And then you probably want to go to Theft.gov, which I'm going to explain in just a minute, so that you can make sure that there is no other form of identity theft happening on your account. Okay, this is just a picture of what one of the ads looks like. It's from a recent case that we just brought, or it was started months ago, but it just became public, against a site that was impersonating Clorox. And so there are sites that may impersonate other well-known cleaning supplies, or trusted brands that you might use for disinfection, and trying to get people to believe that they're buying actual Clorox products on their website, and all they're going to do is steal your money, but you think that you can trust them. And so you have to do a little bit of research. You can't click through links on emails or on texts. You really have to go and shop through commercial outlets that you're familiar with, that you have a track record with, to try to avoid some of these sites. Okay, so another recent development are COVID-19 clinical trials. And so people are getting more and more emails, phone calls, texts, asking if they would like to participate in a COVID-19 clinical trial. And there's lots of them out there. There's plenty of them that are still underway, particularly through like the Veterans Administration. They're running a lot of COVID clinical trials. And so folks are really interested to participate. And so you want to know that if you get somebody emails you or approaches you and suggests that you take part in a clinical trial, If it's a real clinical trial, it's never going to ask you to pay for access to the trial. That's just not how they're conducted. It's not going to happen. That is a big red flag. Somebody asks you to pay, it's a scam. Walk away. And if they ask for your bank account, credit card, or social security number, whether it's during recruitment or if you've agreed and you're during the screening, you know that's something that you don't want to do. And so just walk away from that. Oh, and there's a URL at the bottom here, clinicaltrials.gov. That's a good place to go if you want to research that. If you're interested in a particular one, or you think there might be an opportunity there that you'd like to take advantage of, check it out there at clinicaltrials.gov. Another scam is contract tracing scams. So, while the contract tracers will contact you, you may get an email from them and say, someone you came in contact with has tested positive or shown symptoms. We recommend this. And then they're probably going to want to talk to you to get some more information from you to see if there's somebody else that they need to contact as part of their tracing chain. So while they may ask you for some information, in general, those texts that you get from a legitimate contact tracer, they usually don't have links in them. And so for the very reason that we don't want people just clicking on links. That's much more of a way about how fraud happens or how people load damaging software onto your phone or your tablet or your laptop. So in general, there aren't those links there, but they may want to contact you. And if you are on the phone with somebody that says they're a contact tracer, we want people to cooperate with that. This is important in getting ahead of the curve on this. But a contact tracer is not going to ask you for money. They're not going to ask you to pay for being part of the contract tracing service, and they're not going to ask you for your social security number. It's not necessary. Social security numbers won't be asked from the contact tracer. So just know that, and they're not going to ask you for bank account information or for a credit card account or something like that. And they're not going to ask you to pay in any other way. So that's another red flag to tell people it's just a scam. You can ignore that. So these kinds of games, this isn't really particularly COVID related, but it does pop up whenever there is some kind of it pops up a lot over the holidays and also during crises. And if people are facing any kind of financial challenges. So these are chain letter scams. They're online games, and they really, to a lot of people, they really feel like they're harmless. I've got some of the names from here. Blessing Loom, Money Board, Giving Circle. But these have been around for years and years. I've seen them when the game board looks like a plane and it says, come take a trip with me. Sometimes it's ladies' lunch and they have a dining table graphic set up and you pay to get a seat at the table. There are just different ways to get your attention and to kind of distract you from actually what's going on. These are forms of pyramid schemes. And so not only are they unlawful, and you certainly don't want to participate in something that's unlawful, chances are pretty great that you'll lose money. How they work is you pay in, say, $100 to get your seat on the board at that blue level. And then you have to recruit other people to join in so that there's enough people to fill those blue seats and you move up to the green level. And people just keep recruiting and get more and more people so that you can move up to the pink level. And then eventually the people on the pink level take their turns going into the center level to get the kitty, to get that $800 total in the center. And then you get kicked out and you can either come back into the board or another board starts, or that's basically how people play this game. Well, as you can imagine, people are recruiting friends, family, coworkers, but at a certain point, the circle closes. You run out of people, the people that you've recruited run out of people, and everybody gets stuck holding the bag. You get no money. You might have paid in hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and you've never gotten anything in return. And then certainly you don't want to recruit your friends to be in that kind of a situation where you've told them to join this thing and then they get stuck. They've paid $100 at every level and they get nothing. So we always advise people not to do chain letter scams, not to be part of a pyramid scheme. Okay, very quickly, I'll talk about some charity scams, not especially COVID related, but they do come up. Whenever there is a crisis, charity scams start to come out again. And certainly this time of year is a time where we see an awful lot of charitable giving, both legitimate and scam related. So when it comes to charities, they're sort of like a continuum. There are these gold standard charities that you've got, and I'll use that just kind of like in your personal, opinion, how charities that you've dealt with over time, you've got a track record with, you've given them money over a long period of time, and you're happy with the work that they do, you're happy with how they do it and how they use the donations. And then a little bit further down in the continuum, there are charities that they're legitimate, but that maybe you've got questions about, too many administrative costs or how they use the donations or how they implement things, that maybe it's not your favorite place to give money. It's you don't feel like it's your wisest choice for your donation. And then there are the out and out scams. There are outfits that pretend to be charities, that sometimes they use a lookalike name, or like a lookalike logo. So they use something like the Red Cross logo that sort of tricks you into thinking it might be Red Cross. We see this an awful lot with military and veterans charities, where they just put the word troops or military or service member or veteran someplace in the name, and try to make it look, kind of wrap the flag around it and try to make it look as legitimate as possible, particularly if there's some kind of, if it's like November for Veterans Day or Military Family Month, or if there's been some sort of a military tragedy. So there was a fire on the USS Richard Bonhomme ship about 6 months ago. We saw a lot of military charity scams come out at that point, because people were concerned. They wanted to do something. They wanted to do something fast, and they thought, oh, here's a charity I can donate to help these sailors, the displaced sailors. Let me give money there. And so what you want to do is do your research. Look to see how long the charity's been in existence, what their track record is, if they're going to be able, and this has nothing to do with fraud, are they going to be able to get the money to where it's supposed to go? It can be fraudulent, but it can just be they're not able to get the help to the people that need it. Maybe they don't have the infrastructure to be able to do that. If you go to ftc.gov/charity, the FTC's website, we've got articles and a list of the links of where you can go to do that research on the charities. There's Navistar and giving.org and some other places where we can do your research so that you have some idea of who you want to give to. You might even want to have a charity plan in place so that you have some idea, include it in your budget so that you know how much money you have available to give to charity, and divide it up among the charities that you feel like you know and trust, and then leave a little in reserve for things that come up at the last minute, or emergency situations, tragedies that you'd like to donate to help people, and then donate to your favorite charities that way, or to the charities that somebody you trust recommends as the time arises. And so you want to research the charity. You want to know how much of the money goes to the charity and not to telemarketers or to other administrative costs. Again, you can find that on some of these websites where you do your research. They'll have ratings and a report. And you should never, never, never pay by wire transfer or gift card if somebody says they're a charity and they're soliciting money from you, whether they're legitimate or not. It's just not a wise way to pay. And it's the way most fraudsters are going to ask you to pay, is by gift card or wire transfer. Okay, a recent scam that we've seen are utilities overpayment scams. The bottom line on these are you'll get a call or a text from somebody that says it's your utility company and that you've overpaid and they want to arrange to get a refund to you. And so that sounds good, right? Why not do that? Well, that's not how utilities operate. Really, if you have overpaid, then they'll just credit it onto your account, hold it over to the next bill, something like that. They're not going to credit you back the money. And so these scammers sort of take advantage of what seems like a sensible, reasonable thing, and then they'll ask you to send them money to cover some kind of a fee or processing, or they'll ask for all of your account information so that they can credit your account. And really, that's just to get your information to commit identity theft. Okay, so what are some of the things that you can do if you're getting these kinds of pitches? What can you tell people that they should do? First of all, if folks are getting robocalls, they should just hang up. They don't have to answer them. If you accidentally pick up the phone and you find you're talking to a robocaller, just hang up. Most robocalls are illegal if they're trying to sell something. And if somebody's willing to ignore the law, they're probably willing to scam you. So you don't have to worry about hanging up on those. You also don't want to give in to high pressure sales tactics. If you get on the phone with a telemarketer and they're trying to convince you that something horribly dire is going to happen, if you don't pay them right away, if you don't act immediately, that's a classic sign of a scammer, is trying to create that panic to make you act, to make you to hand over important information or to pay them before you've had a chance to think about it, take a breath, talk to somebody. And so that should send off a red flag in your head. And you want to kind of drill that into your patron's head if you can, that those high pressure sales tactics are usually a sign that you should just stop, take a step back, and think about it. So phishing scams, I'm sure you've heard of. They can come by phone calls, by telemarketing, like what we were just talking about. They can come by text. They can come by email. What people are familiar with are the emails that used to have really bad spelling and bad grammar, and if you really stopped and read it, it would jump out at you, and you'd say, okay, this clearly isn't really from the actual company or from a government agency. This is a phishing email. Things have improved somewhat since then, and so you can't always tell. There are signs. You have to look at them much more carefully to find them, but there are definitely signs. You want to hover over the email that the from email with your mouse. Sometimes, like I've been getting an email lately that claims it's from PayPal, and once you hover over the email address from the person who sent it or the bot who sent it, it's just a long string of gobbledygook. It bears no relationship to what a real email would look like. And that's usually enough for me to be able to spot that it's some kind of a phishing scam. Very often, I get an email that's claiming to be from a company that I've never done business with, that I know I don't have an account with. And so in general, if they're threatening me that my account is about to be closed, I know that that's a phishing scam. But if you're concerned and you think it is a company that you do business with and maybe there is a problem, just go and find the number or the email on your statement or online, a number or an email that you know to be true, that you know is correct, that you know it's the right one. Don't use anything that you've gotten out of the phishing email or from somebody that's called you or texted you. And then just call and check. Call and find out if everything's okay on your account. Chances are it is, and they'll tell you that's a phishing email that's going around, just ignore it. Two phishing emails that I wanted to raise with you now. They're particularly egregious, and we've seen them recently. And so I wanted to share them because you may not have seen them before. So the first one is a text or a call that is coming into to immigrants saying, if you don't pay whatever, they're saying they're from ICE and there's a fee that they have to pay. We're going to come and arrest you and deport you. And so you can imagine that raises a lot of concern with people. It's certainly a way to take advantage of people's vulnerability and their fears. And so people are willing to pay anything. They'll go get that gift card and send it to the scammer. They'll give the numbers to the scammer, or they'll give account information, or they'll pay through PayPal or however the scammer is asking for it. But that's one form of the phishing scam that we've seen. Another is you get a text that says, you have a package waiting for you. This usually happens in apartment buildings or on college campuses. We saw a lot of this in the summertime when students had been away. They left campus at the beginning of the pandemic and didn't come back until maybe late July, early August, when some campuses opened back up again. And they got emails that said, hey, you have a package in the common area, you have a package in the mailroom. Because we've held it for so long, you need to pay, we put it in storage, you need to pay this fee to be able to get it out. Contact us to learn more. And so people would call and, give them a credit card number thinking they needed to pay a $10 fee or a $20 fee to get their package. In reality, there is no package and there is no fee. If you're concerned and you think you actually do have a package, call somebody who would know. Call who you would ordinarily pick up the package from, or go down to that mailroom yourself and check. But don't depend on a text that asks you for money or for information to be able to get that package. And the last one I wanted to talk about, it's especially egregious, particularly during these times when everybody's already on edge as it is. But the scammer will text you a picture of your own child. And it's a legitimate picture of your child. Usually they've grabbed it off of a public social media page. And so at the time, you're just thinking, they've got a picture of my kid, the stranger, what is this all about? They're either threatening them or saying there's some harm that's going to come to them, and you should pay to avoid, having your child harmed. So first of all, we would say you want to contact the police about something like that. You don't want to pay. Somebody is really just blackmailing you, and they'll maybe try to continue to blackmail you. They have no idea where you are or where your child is. But that's why you call the police, just in case, so that you file a report in case anything does escalate at all. But you certainly don't want to pay that money, and you don't want to give them any more information. And you want to try to get your children's and your social media accounts shut down to a smaller network. Have them not set to private, or don't post pictures of your children on a public social media page. That's one way to protect yourself against those kinds of things. Okay, so this is something I've been alluding to. Let's talk about it in a little bit more detail. If somebody asks you to pay with a gift card, don't. It's always a scam. So what I've been talking about are like scammers will call and tell you there's some hysterical thing going on. They create a sense of urgency. They want you to go buy a gift card, read them the PIN numbers on the back, scratch up the PIN numbers and read to them, and they'll help the problem go away. Whatever kind of an imposter scam it is, whatever they're threatening you with, whatever harm they've created a sense of panic in you about, it's going to go away if you just read them that gift card. Okay, so first of all, it's not real. They're just trying to get you wound up so that you feel like you need to act. The reason they ask for the gift card is that it's an untraceable payment method. So once you read them the PIN numbers, once they have the number on the gift card and then the PIN numbers that go with it, they have the value of that gift card. So it means it's worth nothing to you, no matter what you paid for it. They can then go resell those numbers on the black market and make their money back. So that's how that's how they scam you with a gift card. Similar with wire transfers, if they want you to go to MoneyGram or Western Union or someplace and wire money to them, that's also not traceable. Once that money is gone, it's gone. It's just like sending cash. Reloadable debit cards are the same kind of a thing. Once you transfer the value to somebody, it's gone. You can't get that money back. If you know somebody that's happened to, go to ftc.gov/gift cards. We've got a list of some of the major gift cards issuers that and their customer service numbers. Sometimes, if chances are the money is gone and you're not going to get it back. But if it happened, an hour ago, and you happen to see this person, you might be able to call that 800 number and tell Apple, Google, whoever the gift card issuer is, iTunes, that that this happened to somebody. It was a scam. They may be able to replace some of the value, But at the very least, they should know that this is happening so that they can try to put some better controls into place. So this is just another little explanation of exactly why you don't want to use these untraceable methods with people that you don't know. And in addition, credit cards have legal protections in them that a lot of other payments don't have. And so almost always you're safer paying with a credit card, but you just don't want to give out your credit card number willy-nilly. You want to know who you're dealing with before you give anybody your credit card. Other ways to avoid scams are do online searches. So get on and search the name of the company that you're thinking about doing business with, the name of the product, and the word review or even scam, complaints, and see what comes up, and go through more than the first couple of search pages. Try to get as much information as you can, because you'll find some outliers. You'll find some people that are saying, oh, this is great. It's the best thing I ever did. It's a terrific product. And other people that'll say, this is nothing but a scam. And, sometimes those opposite ends, you're going to get that in probably every kind of a search. But what are the bulk of the results saying? Are most people saying they were satisfied and they got their money? Are most people dissatisfied and saying that they got ripped off? That's just a data point for you to consider. It doesn't override everything else, but it helps you put things into context. Don't believe your caller ID. And I say that just because it's not proof that somebody is calling from where you think they're calling from or where they say they're calling from. So there are always scams that the caller will say, I'm calling from the IRS, I'm calling for Social Security Administration, I'm calling from the Federal Trade Commission, I'm in Washington, D.C., you need to send me this money to make this happen. Okay. And the person looks at their caller ID and they see the 202 number and they think, well, that's the Washington, D.C. area code. This must be legitimate. That's not the case. It can be spoofed. Scammers can fake the caller ID. So you can't necessarily use that as proof that a call is legitimate or it's coming from where you think it's coming from. You want to be kind of skeptical of free trial offers. Again, mostly because that doesn't necessarily prove that a product is good. I think people tend to think that, well, if this was a scam, they wouldn't give me my money back, right? If I've got a free trial offer, then that's just as good as telling me that it's not a scam and that this is a good product. That's not really the case, because either they just ignore that and they don't actually give you a free trial offer, and they count on the fact that you think of that as being proof. And so, I just wouldn't depend on that to tell me that I'm not dealing with a scammer just because they offer you free money back. That's probably not the case. So another thing you can do is sign up for free scam alerts at ftc.gov/subscribe. We send out email updates when we post our blog posts, and many of the blog posts these days do focus on scam-related items, and it's a good way to pick up how scams are changing and evolving as the days go by. Another thing you can do is monitor your accounts and your credit reports on a regular basis. It's just a good piece of financial health, a good financial foundation to have some idea of what's happening in your accounts and to make sure that your credit report is clean and doesn't have any mistakes or fraudulent transactions on it. But it also can help you spot identity theft early in the process, where you can nip it in the bud and try to take care of it. So the three credit reporting companies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, announced a few months back that they were giving everybody a free credit report every week through April because of the pandemic and because of the financial implications of the pandemic. So this is a wonderful benefit that I encourage everybody to take advantage of. Ordinarily, from annualcreditreport.com, you can get a free credit report every year from those three credit reporting companies, and you can stagger the order so that you can get, say, one in February, another one in May or June, and another one in, say, October. Every 3 or 4 months, you can get some version of your credit report, and that can be kind of the early warning system to let you know if something's wrong with your credit report. They're not identical. They're very, very similar, but they pull from different places. And your credit report is just a snapshot of your credit file at that given moment. So it'll change from day to day, from week to week. But it's close enough that it's a good early warnings system. But if you can get a credit report every week, if you've been having any kind of billing troubles, or say if you've had with the mortgage moratorium, if you've had you've worked out agreements with your creditors about paying back your mortgage or your student loans or things like that, you want to make sure that that's recorded properly on your credit report, and that there's no fraud there. So definitely a good tool. Okay, so this is what I referenced earlier. How do I clean up the mess? What if all of this stuff has led to identity theft? What do I do? Or if I suspect identity theft? So really, really quickly, the first thing you want to do is call the companies where you know the fraud occurred. So let's say you look at your credit report, or you get a bill and there's a weird charge on there from a department store, and you know you didn't buy anything at that department store. Call that department store and tell them, I didn't make this purchase. You call the customer service number or a fraud department number and tell them, I didn't make this purchase. I believe this is the result of identity theft. I want to get it removed from my bill, and that you probably need to then change. You might have to get a new account number or a new account card, change your password and your PIN on that account if you have them. And you may have to go back to them once you have a little bit more proof. But you want to do that first to get that process started, to kind of like stop the flow right there. Then you want to go to the credit reporting companies and you want to put a fraud alert on your credit report. So that means anybody granting new credit in your name and your numbers, they've got to verify who the person is applying is you, right? So that it makes it a little bit harder for anybody to get new credit in your name. Then you want to order a copy of your credit reports, which is going to be much easier right now because you're entitled to get them anyway. You want to try to get them through this process as an identity theft victim first. If that's not, then you can try to go for the free weekly one. And then you want to look at that credit report really carefully and see if there are other transactions on there, if there are other things that don't make sense, if there's other fraud, even if there are mistakes, simple mistakes, but you still want to correct all of those. So you make a copy of that, you do up a letter, and you send it back to the credit reporting company indicating where the fraud is and where any of the mistakes are, and ask them to change it. Then, when you're done with that, you want to report the identity theft to the FTC, and this is how. You want to go to Theft.gov, which is the FTC's site. It's a one-stop for reporting identity theft and for getting a recovery plan to deal with it and to correct the problem. Congress tasked FTC with being the clearinghouse for all identity theft complaints from consumers and doing consumer education about identity theft. This is probably 20 something years ago. And so while we don't have any authority to actually bring cases against identity theft because it's a crime and we're a civil law enforcement agency, we're supposed to be the repository and let people know the number of complaints that come through, the kinds of identity theft we're seeing, and then to educate people about them and let you know kind of what we're seeing. And so eventually that led to the creation of this site, which is much more interactive. When you get on there and you report the fraud, it does help us be able to report on trends and to report on the analytics and to tell the public exactly what's happening with identity theft. But you can get a personal recovery plan. So you can get a step-by-step guide to what you should do to start that recovery process. You can even get what's called an identity theft report. So it's a legal document that gives you certain rights as an identity theft victim that you can't get any other way. And when you print out your FTC report, it prints out as an identity theft report. And you can then use that to go back to those companies where the fraud occurred. There's sample letters on the site that will populate with your information. You take that letter, you take the identity theft report, and you can send them to the company to prove you're the identity theft victim. It's just a tool to help you continue the recovery process and to prove that you're who you say you are, and that charges need to be taken off your credit report, off of your bills, and any other implications from identity theft. Okay, and this just, I gave you this slide because it's a nice, convenient way to remember the numbers you need to call for the credit reporting bureaus, the credit reporting companies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, to get a fraud alert, a credit freeze, to opt out of pre-screened offers, those kinds of things. If you're facing identity theft, these are the numbers you want to know. Okay, so this, I just wanted to show you this because it's a little social media graphic that we came up with at the beginning of the pandemic. All the information is still really relevant, and this is shareable on social media. You could cut and paste it into an online newsletter, onto your website. You could probably even print it out at some point, although I know that's not practical now because we're not all together. But I just wanted to let you know you can get that at ftc.gov/coronavirus if you were interested in sharing that. We've got this one that talks about relief payment scams, and when the government was sending out checks for the relief payments, there were a lot of scams floating around about those. That isn't quite so much of an issue now, but if there's a second round of payments, that may come up again, and these same kinds of issues would apply. You don't want to respond to calls, texts, or emails that say they're from the government about your money, because it's just scammers trying to get money from you, knowing that you're going to be interested to find out how you get your economic payment. You don't want to pay anybody to get your relief payment because that's not necessary. The government is not going to ask you for money to get that economic impact payment. Scammers might also try to say, we're from the Treasury, or we're from wherever. We sent you too much money. You need to get some of that back to us, and here's how to do it. Send us cash, send us a gift card, wire the money back. Again, you've heard that story. Don't do it. And you don't want to click on emails and texts or social media about these kinds of things, because that's probably just going to get you closer to a scammer, or it's going to load harmful software onto your computer, your phone, your tablet. So let me just mention again, one way to stay connected is to go to ftc.gov/subscribe. You can get our email updates about scams and other kinds of consumer issues as they develop. And if you've encountered any of these scams, you want to go to reportfraud.ftc.gov. It's a nice, simple site that walks you through the process and then gives you some tips on the other side for whatever consumer issue that you are reporting to the FTC. So that's most of what I had to say about scams, COVID related. I think I got most of my big points in there, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
We don't have any questions in the chat box, but if you do have any questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself. We're not a huge crowd here today.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk if that's easier for folks.
Yeah. So, and I apologize if anybody's hearing the leaf blower in the background.
I should also add, we have a bulk order website, ftc.gov/bulk order, and there's a button on most pages on our website, which is consumer.ftc.gov, so that you can get to that bulk order website and you can order the materials we have in print. The caveat to that is that print budgets are extremely tight right now, and so there's stuff up there, and go ahead and order it, but we've had to take a lot of things down because we're not yet able to do the usual printing that we would do around this time of the year. And so once budgets are kind of a little bit more stable and things are a little bit more back to normal, we'll be able to get back there. Because ordinarily we would say to librarians especially, somebody might say, I'm having a big program, I'd like to get 500 copies of this, but the website says I can only get 200. Usually there's an email that you can make your case and say, hey, could I get 500 of these? And they'll figure out a way to move them from someplace else and get you the copies that you need for your programming. We may not be able to do that now because those other copies may just not exist, but they will eventually.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I should probably just go look at the website, but does your website list current scams so that if I receive a phone call or an email or something and I'm suspicious about it, can I go there and look, or do I actually have to contact somebody to see if it makes sense?
So I guess what I would say is if you go to consumer.ftc.gov, you can check out in our blog. If there's a big scam going around, we've done a blog post about it, unless you happen to see it before we do. So I would check there first, check the last few months worth of blog posts. They're usually listed in a side column so you can kind of scan down and see what topics we've written on. You could also search the name of it's consumer.ftc.gov. The other thing you can look at is ftc.gov/libraries. That is not updated as frequently, so you're not going to see the blog posts or press releases or anything like that. But it's where we've got all of the FTC's biggest consumer issues that we do campaigns about, and it's organized by population. So there's a section just for identity theft victims, a section for older people, for younger people, for Spanish speakers, for identity theft victims, for the military. And so it's organized that way just so that you can see, depending on what population you're working with, what materials might be the most interesting for you or might be the most relevant. And then there's some programming ideas in there as well to give you tips on how to incorporate them into programs that you're already doing. So that's a good place to look to see a lot of the evergreen ideas and a lot of the evergreen issues. But I would go to consumer.ftc.gov and look at the blog to see the latest things. When I mentioned ftc.gov/subscribe, that's how you sign up to get those blog posts in your email box so that you can see them as they come out.
I plugged the website or the website into the chat box.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
Need it.
I'll add in the no, I just erased myself.
Oh, which one are you trying to add in?
Oh, the library portal.
Oh, it went through.
Oh, did it? Okay, there we go. That way, if you want to look around and you have it, that's where the bulk of our information is. And then, of course, ftc.gov/coronavirus. It will talk about some of the latest scams, but I would always start with the blog, with the main blog first. ftc.gov/coronavirus is good to look around for a lot of the other resources and the other URLs to do some research. Thank you.
Sounds good. You're welcome. Do we have any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, if there are no further questions or comments, I will turn off the recording and